This is Business Nigeria. Nigeria has begun the journey to significantly transform its food and agricultural sector by launching the construction of the $510 million Special Agro-Industrial Processing Zone financed by the African Development Bank and development partners. Vice President Kashim Shettima, the President of the African Development Bank Group, Dr. Akinwumi Adesina, and Governor of Kaduna State, Uba Sani, led the groundbreaking for the first of the 8 SAPZ projects. The other 7 states that form part of the Phase 1 program are Cross River, Kano, Kwara, Imo, Ogun, Oyo, and the Federal Capital Territory. The special agro-industrial processing zones are expected to transform Nigeria's rural areas into thriving economies that will end years of importing food that can be produced locally, boost national food security, produce for the export market, and create jobs for millions of young Nigerians. Food security expert AfricanFarmer Mogaji is here with me to talk more on this. Thank you very much for joining me at this point.
Thank you for having me.
So, what do you think about this development so far?
Well, it's still one of the usual developments. What I mean by that is it's still one of those good projects that starts, and we hope this one ends well.
Okay.
And I'm being very sincere with that because this kind of magnitude of projects over the years end up being moribund. Good intentions, good strategy, implementation, always a challenge when we look back. So until we look back at this 2-3 years after completion, I'm not excited currently, but it's a step in the right direction. It gives us hope, but until we see that sustainability, I won't jubilate.
What do you think is the problem in Nigeria where there are some policies that are celebrated at the beginning, yet we don't see through?
Yeah, most foreign funded projects, they come with how they want the projects to be implemented, not necessarily how the country or the state would want it implemented. It's straight jacket. You stick to it or they take the funds away. That is something that we all need to correct and check any donor agency, developmental partner, most of them, the big names, always come with a project and it must be implemented the way they want it. Adjustments are not mostly allowed, you know, so that's a major challenge that I see. And I hope with this project, it will be different. So
those kinds of projects are not tailored to the people or to the locality, and it might not see the light of day or go far if it is not tailored to that particular locality or that particular country, right?
Check the data, almost 30 years. World Bank, AFDB, they all try, but they didn't set out the projects to try. They set out for most projects to achieve a goal. But when you reflect 5 years, 10 years down the line, these projects don't deliver. One of the major reasons is backward integration. So one thing is for us to have the processing zones set up. It's a brilliant one. But my challenge with these current projects are, now, the backward integration, if they're going to be processing, let's say, mangoes, because it's Kaduna, if they're processing mangoes, have we worked 3 years with farmers to produce the varieties that this equipment, this very sensitive equipment, will be able to work with? I have not seen that happen. In terms of logistics, have we taken care of how these crops will be moved so that we will not have post-harvest losses? I've not really heard that. So when we set up the factory, which is good, we also ought to have started with training the farmers. Adoption and adaptation takes some time. So I've not seen that, and I've commented on this in the last maybe 3 years or 4 when they began to talk about this. So sustainability is key. All these projects, they need to allow the country and the state to have a say in the design and the implementation.
How do we achieve that?
Well, probably the confidence to say no to the funding.
Do we have that confidence?
That it's challenging because that's a lot of money, and that's where, you know, we have that gap. They want the monies to come. It would, you know, temporarily fix a lot of things, but long term, will it be beyond, is the biggest, I call it vanity metrics. Beyond the vanity metrics, would it be sustainable? What have we learned from what has happened in the past? Because there's a lot of money that goes into all this. And the states, most of these things also come as either counterpart funding, meaning the state also has to put the citizens' resources in it. But I would advise the governor to also look at ways to adapt. Let the donor agencies or the foreign partners do what they want to do, but build sustainability yourself. They can bring the equipment, but the state needs to raise funding and raise partners who will ensure that these projects work because their resources will also be involved.
So that should be part of the agreement as well?
No. The donor, that anybody bringing money dictates
so
how.
So if that's not part of the agreement and the donor wants it a certain way, do you think this money will come in if the government has its own plans as well?
So I would say you have no control over the donors and the funders. You are the one to step it down to make sure that long term it is sustainable.
Okay.
Because you can afford those resources to build all this infrastructure. So allow them build, but you raise partners, you know, either indigenes or generally raise funding that will make it sustainable. So when they are through with what they want to do, you are building your sustainability plan. You are localizing it, cascading it down to what will work. What we don't see is the state or local governments taking responsibility to say, this thing will not really work the way we think it will work, but let's build capacity. Let's raise funding. Let's raise donor agency funding to make it sustainable. We only take what they give to us, you know, shove it down our throats, and that's what's been happening. I hope this is different.
You're not optimistic that this will work?
I'm not optimistic yet because I've not seen the farms. And the farms start with seeds.
Okay.
You know, raising farmers who specialize in seeds of whatever crop they'll be processing. That is a major, because when local investors like you, okay, working professionals want to, you know, play in the game, they need to grow seeds. So as long as the state is not seed secure, that project is not sustainable. That's one. Two, we need equipments to farm. We need tractors. We need sprayers. Everything is still manual in the country. So if we're getting equipments that is intermediate equipments, not the massive ones that, you know, you can, an Emeka or Kamaru or Chinedu can, you know, or Yinka can work with. We need those equipments for productivity and efficiency. Once there's no productivity on the farm, then you would always feed the factory garbage. So there's a lot of value chain that I expect that the state governments in all the states that they will be implementing this project should by now, this is about 3 years of planning and we ought to be able to see these things. We're not seeing them. But also, I would say private sector also needs to pay attention now. For every government project, there is a template and there's a how it goes. Now, the private sector in Nigeria also is too laid back. They just watch things happen, and at the end of the day, it comes back to haunt everybody. So these vacuums are for private sector if there's a lapse or oversight from government. That's synergy. We have not been saying.
Are the private sector players seeing confidence in this, in any of these projects, especially this one we're talking about, the SAPC project?
The private sector is almost never confident in anything government wants to do. However, it should be let the government do what they want to do. This seed that I spoke about, if government has not paid enough attention to that, that's private sector.
Okay.
This equipment should be private sector. So we need to pay attention to this because we are exporting a lot of jobs out of the country. There's a company that tried to come to Nigeria from Ghana to process mangoes and take it out every day. They do. I've been to their factory. Now, they came to Nigeria and found out that the number of stops by security agencies is high, okay? But guess what? The security agencies also are doing their work because most of these locations are at the borders.
Yeah.
So bottom line is, it's the private sector that ought to pay attention to some of these things, setting up logistics. when the Indians and Chinese come to Nigeria, they don't look at what we don't have. They look at what we have that they can leverage on. We are always, as Nigerians, many of us are always looking at what we're focused on what we don't have, not on what we have. But foreigners leverage what we have that they can work with. And foreigners are always looking long-term. Investors in Nigeria are looking at short-term. So I don't know if we should blame them because of the environment also, but bottom line is that we need the dynamics to change. Without the private sector coming in, without the royal fathers coming in, that's our kings, without them, these two people coming in, we may not be able to achieve this goal at record time to make it sustainable. Because our royal fathers, when Nigeria was food secure, a key component partner were our royal fathers. Today, our royal fathers, or what you call traditional leaders, are not actively involved. So that's what made the rural community unhabitable for farmers. And you have insurgents and co coming. It's because we've left a lot of farmlands uncultivated. So our royal fathers, how deep is our royal fathers involved in this? Very crucial.
All right. So you talked earlier, we still talking about the private sector involvement now. What kind of incentives should the government give them to attract them to invest in these kinds of ventures?
Protection. Protection is key. And I'm not talking about...
So protection in what form? Protection
in terms of investment. Okay? Protecting the farmers is very crucial. Take, for instance, you know, there are places where, like in the south, you hear Omonile. Okay, so you have invested. A case is happening in Lagos, in Itoiki. There is an investment going on, and Omonile just brought bulldozer and brought thugs and bulldoze. And this is a federal government land that I have used since 1995. Okay, so when that discourages, so if I take investment from you and I invest it there on a land that I know belongs to federal government, and now Omonile comes and there's nothing anybody can do. So bottom line is we need to protect farmers and investors in many locations so that investors will, you know, be more open. There are many things happening to, well, also, there are many things happening to investors in Nigeria. Policy somersault is a major thing. I have been a victim of policy somersault about 4 times. And what happens is that the Nigerian investor, mostly they are short-term. And when there's a policy somersault, projected revenue, projected income, everything just goes down the drain. I recall 2020, as on March, we had a program bringing in all the multinational cooperatives together and projecting the cost of maize, that it would increase by about 50 to 70%. That same year, policy changed. Suddenly, the president was wrongly advised and he changed policy. And in a space of 2 weeks, the price of a ton of corn moved from 45,000 to 145,000. Wow. And 4 months down the line, went to 210, and it has not come down to date. One policy.
So how do you expect the farmers to cope?
So that's what's affecting our poultry. So all the people who took investments or who invested in poultry, I know someone who invested everything, 80,000 birds. Now they are running less than 15,000. So bottom line, policy. If we protect with policy, things will work better. Policy, policy, policy. The private sector is not comfortable with policy, but guess what? With or without policy, we have to feed Nigerians. Somebody has to do it. Either it's Nigerians or foreigners, but somebody has to feed it. But mostly, the foreigners are cashing in.
So what do you think about the Nigeria First policy?
Now, the Nigeria First policy is a good one. When I was chairman at GRIC at the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, I insisted that every snack we took, we ate during our meetings. You are formally dressed and co. There was somebody selling gari with kuli, that's granite snack. We cold water, we took gari. The foreigners in our midst took the gari and kuli and sugar, well packaged.
With excitement.
Yeah, I brought sweet corn, boiled sweet corn. We took local indigenous foods, and and that thing worked. So bottom line is the Nigeria First is good, but are we also taking steps to backward integrate to ensure that the seeds back again to the seeds? If we do Nigeria First, and we are not securing that the backward integration is sufficient and adequately implemented, what will happen is we will open up a big gap, creating a bigger problem and having to import. So SMEs, we've not focused a lot on the SMEs. Last year, gracefully, the Minister of Agriculture, Senator Abubakar Kyari, saw that vacuum and invited quite a lot of SMEs, young people in the value chain, had a conversation with them. And that took place the first time in 20 years. Once in 20 years. But the good thing is that it happened. Okay, so bottom line is the smallholder farmers work with the SMEs. The SMEs are our youths, educated in, small. The middlemen are part of it. So bottom line is the Nigeria First conversation. It's a step in the right direction. We would like to see all governors begin to offer boli and granite, that is roasted plantain. Of
boli and fish.
Yeah, boli and fish to their foreign counterpart. I was excited when I went to Jigawa, and the governor, when we went to the governor's house and we had lunch, everything was purely local. Amala in Jigawa, amala in Begiri, and Ewedu. The exposure of the governor reflected in the food there. Shinkafa and co, which I've also seen the Minister of Agriculture also do. I'm just saying that until we find parastatals, governors, ministers, and the presidency adopt these things, it will not cascade down. It should not just be a proclamation. It should be something that is implemented. When we begin to see it, the news will filter down. If we don't do that, also, if we don't do that, we'll have serious challenges. We'll create a vacuum because we don't have enough. I'll say this. Now, the Nigeria First, have we paid attention to almost that about 90% of all rams in Nigeria is not bred or reared in Nigeria? About 90% plus. It's
you have to go to Cotonou, Benin Republic.
From Niger, Burkina Faso, Mali, the West African coast, the French-speaking countries. Now, so if we say Nigeria First and we sign it into law, but I hope it's after Salah, because that means Salah rams will go out. But guess what? We're losing a lot of money. Every year buying every street in Nigeria, if you calculate it by having like at least 5 people slaughtering Salah rams. Bottom line is that the amount of money we lose on the grass, amount of money we lose on maize, amount of money we lose on medication, capacity development, logistics. Bottom line is that Nigeria First is supposed to be transformational, supposed to, if we backward integrate it. But it's supposed to open up a lot of opportunities for youths, private sectors, for Nigerians to look into. So
with the way it is right now, do you think we can sustain it, looking at the fact that we still import food?
So there's always a shock, a period where the proclamation has come out that, yes, Nigeria First. Now, we now need to rush to bring the right people, square pegs in square holes to ensure that this happens. It will take sleepless nights. It's not going to be easy. But we need a team that is not politically motivated to do this work. Get the right people who are already passionate about these things and, just unleash them and they will fix the job. They need power and authority. They can have power and not have authority. Like if you look at the minister now, the Minister of Agriculture has power in the Ministry on Agriculture in the country, but does not have authority over customs. Does not have authority over the security agencies, because if things are coming in through the borders that is porous, it will also make him, make him look as if he's not doing the work. So we need power and authority to be able to get this done. I've paid my dues in this sector. I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly of this sector. And power and authority needs to be given to people that you ask them to fix things.
So if I may ask, how have you been able to sustain this drive in the industry?
I'll say this in Yoruba. I hope I can interpret in English. They say some of us are neurono, as in things happen and We're just wired for it.
Okay.
It's a calling. I would say it's a calling.
No matter, just a passion for you.
It's no matter what happens. I always say this, I've been privileged to be detained a few times when policy happens to you. But somehow you will stay, you will stop, but you keep going. But one thing that I've been able to do that has worked for me is raise people who were ensuring that they don't make our mistakes. That's very crucial for me, and that's the campaign I'm doing now. Many of our proteges are really doing well now because they are riding on the shoulder that a few of us are vulnerable enough to share and say, this is a trap. When you're signing this investment contract, no, don't, because money is coming to you, compromise this, you know. So, and it's helping. If we have more of that, if we scale knowledge and capacity development, we'll be able to do that. But I say this is the only country we have. I've never wanted to go out of this country, and I'm never going to Japa anywhere because the money is here. The future is here. Africans, foreigners are looking into Nigeria. Nigerians are looking out. We need to look inward, irrespective of the challenges. All right, thank you very much, AfricanFarmer Mogaji. Is that your government name now? Yeah, it's going to be 14 years, 20 years, June 14th. Since you adopted the name? Yeah. Nice. Legally. AfricanFarmer Mogaji, thank you so much for talking to us this afternoon. Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you. All right, it's now time to review trade.